I'm excited to bring you in on a little ritual that I have, and that is that once a week I get up at 5 in the morning to work for several uninterrupted hours on whatever I want. Now, in theory, I could, do this anytime, but that's in theory. In practice, that doesn't happen, especially when you're running a business with lots of employees. You need to make sure that everyone's looked after, and there's also just a lot happening in the studio to take up my time and attention that really matters. So I found it harder and harder to set aside time to work on stuff for the more distant future. And this is one of the projects that I'm really excited to be chipping away at in my Monday, very early morning. And that is some, as you can see, little dungeon tiles. So, first of all, I alluded to in my resetting the vlog video that I was using these mornings to work on my C# coding, which is the case, but I finally got some white samples from a supplier that I'm excited to be working with, and I really wanted to sink my teeth into them, and this was the special time I could do that in. So this morning I got up at 5, had a cold bath to wake up, had a cup of coffee, and set aside time to start playing around with them. So they came in these pre-punched out, hand-cut little magnet strips. And what I was doing, aside from sort of seeing if our prototype proof of concept would work, was customizing them enough to sort of see how it visually comes together, how it feels to use, and using references from the Dungeons & Dragons cardboard tile box sets you can get. So the origin of this entire thing as a concept came from those boxes because I was very excited to start playing Dungeons & Dragons with my son, MJ. And I tend to, when I get into something, impulsively buy a bunch of crap to, facilitate my excitement. And they were all right, but there was a bunch of things that just annoyed me about them. I got annoyed if you bump the table, you have to rearrange all those squares. I got annoyed that they're all double-sided and you actually don't know. There's no way to organize, the interiors or the exteriors or certain map details because they're so confusing when they're double-sided. There's too many options that you can lose track of. And then the fact that when you play and pack up, you have to lose all the setting up you did and sifting through the tiles to put it back in the box, and it's going to take just as long to set them up again when you might have built a map that's really cool. So, as tends to happen when I get frustrated by by a product I don't like using and imagine a better way to do it, I start making it. And with a supplier, I was brainstorming some of the ways to solve this with magnets, and we started playing with some fridge magnet material that will be printable, but these are what's called white samples, where there's no printing on them, but it's a way for me to basically test the materials and play with the concept to see what sort of sizes and thicknesses and materials that we want to use, but also if this is going to work. So as you can see, basically what I did is customize these to add some grids and some texture and detail, and then I cut out, I correct myself as if I'm going to edit this. I'm not going to edit this substantially. Cut out wall pieces that would surround them, and I wanted to test how these would work if I could build rooms with these flat grid square tiles that are 1 inch in their sort of grid, and surround them with these wall tiles that could also be used to separate the insides of them. And this is all, very hand drawn on and proof of concept, but I was very, very quickly loving it. And that's as far as I got in my sample testing phase. But as you can see, as a result, I have this prototype, like really rough proof of concept. This is the very first proof of concept, where I can lay down a floor plan, surround it with some walls, and use a few accent pieces for some props or a door or a chest or whatever, and throw your minis in there. And very quickly, I've got a room that not only I think feels really satisfying, but I can tuck away or store sideways or upside down, and it's not going to fall off. So it solves a lot of the problems that I was frustrated by with those expensive D&D sets that I got. And I think there's a lot of room for this to be really satisfying. So we cut to the office. I've just ducked away for 5 minutes to show you the results of my labor this morning. I'm very excited by this for a number of reasons. First of all, how cool is that? There's a bunch of stuff under the surface of this though. The card that the the magnets are resting on here, it feels the same as a board game mat. Like, you know, when you open up a, you know, like a Monopoly board or whatever, feels the same, but they've used metal in the glue so that the tiles actually stick to what feels like cardboard. It's really, really cool. So then in theory, that gives us all of the flexibility of printing maps that you can fold out in a portable way, and your maps can, your whole arrangement can stay there. In theory, you could have a town that you open up and it's ready to pick up where you left off, or you could travel with. Now, the sample they sent me was cut in one place. I cut a second line there because I figured if we're gonna have props and stuff in the middle, you're gonna want a second bend so that you have room when it goes to close, so that you can have your stuff filled in there and it sort of holds its place. So that's our initial proof of concept. All very scrappy and hand-drawn, but it's all basically to see if this is worth further developing. And that's part of why I'm making this video, because I want to get your feedback. I'm very excited by this kind of thing. I get giddy at this, but I also get giddy not only at the base level, the fact that we could provide, in theory, a set that has like a grass terrain or a cobblestone street board that you open up and you build a map, but then you could take it even further if you wanted to and do some like flocking or really like realistic terrain. I purchased on Amazon a few trays so that later when I muck around even more, I could give it a go, putting some glue base and really like nice green terrain, some realistic like ground cover, and in theory you can build maps of like entire towns or whatever. I just find this so satisfying. And you know, do your walls, do your doors, do your props, all that stuff. And then the other thing too is if you have miniatures that have magnets, they will stick onto this as well. So like half of our miniatures, we end up putting magnets in them. It's just very convenient and cool. And I just like the idea that you could literally just store your whole game. Everything can stay exactly where it was, and it goes into, anyway. So I really like that. And the idea that you could do realistic terrain slates, obviously wouldn't come with that, but it's an option to sort of like, I like to have my cake and eat it too. And I love 3D printed, like magnet lock, like terrain, but realistically, especially when I'm like playing with my son, I don't have the time to put to put effort into all of that. I just want to buy something that I can start playing with, which is why I bought all those terrain tile sets, the D&D stuff, even those mini figures, just the cheap, like not beautiful. They're just like, they're durable. My son can drop them on the ground. They're not going to shatter. So that sort of thing. So I'm basically more catering to that than the handmade hobbyist stuff. But the idea that you can sort of even elevate it further is pretty fun. Plus, of course, you could use actual, you know, props and stuff. Anyways, I'm blabbering, but proof of concept is the magnet tiles, the metal glue boards. They will be much bigger than this. This is just a sample. And I'm thinking from having done this, I need the size of the grid areas. Like these are like the biggest ones we have. And I think realistically, this is gonna be like the smallest one we'll do. Maybe that and some like long lines, but I think really we need like 4x4 and 3x3. And I found these to be useless. The weird jutting out thing. I think realistically, just to have squares, rectangles, and maybe some long strips will be more than enough. And I was unsure about walls because initially I was like, do we do designs that have the walls on the thing, but that will make corners and all that stuff much more complicated. Anyways, I'm gonna start blabbing and I won't be able to control my blabbing if I don't stop myself. So I'm gonna stop there and ask you for feedback. Let me know what you think. I'm very excited. I just think it could be so satisfying and exciting. I think it's quite innovative and fun in some ways that I haven't seen around before. And I love that it's compatible, potentially portable, and hopefully could be really, really polished. But it's very, very early days. And that is how I spent a portion of my day today, well, since, 5 in the morning. By the way, just before I wrap up this video, I get a lot of people sort of saying, don't burn out, Jazza, or, you work so hard, when do you stop, or whatever. anyone who's watched this vlog for any significant period of time knows that I don't heed that advice. And that's not because I'm like all about hustle culture or whatever. I actually don't have an off switch, because when I get free time, I want to make more stuff. And then often that stuff I tend to try and turn into something more substantial, or a business or whatever it is, which when it works is, you know, it's really exhilarating and fun, and it's another big project. And then it does turn into a lot of work, and it can be stressful, but at the same time, like it's just my psyche and body kind of need to operate in this weird extreme zone. That sounds really dumb to say, but like ever since I was a preteen, I've always overworked. Like I was like a teenager with like projects I'd stay up past midnight animating and working on other stuff. So it's just, you know, I genuinely appreciate the concern, but don't worry, actually it's a huge part of my schedule and rituals and process to have me time, to have breaks. I keep my weekends pretty sacred. That's why I get up at 5 in the morning today to start work on some of the stuff I want to do, because I spent Saturday and Sunday with my family, you know, aside from making the cowboy hat content, you know, like, yeah, I'm looking after myself, but I really appreciate it. That's it for this vlog. How easy is this to just do some cool behind the curtains stuff? I'm so excited about this. I can't even begin to like little, you know, you get little doors. And even though you think of like fridge magnets as having like being able to put anywhere, there is a polarity effect. So they do sort of snap into place, which is really satisfying, because you can just put it where you want, but at the same time, they sort of like, they click in different places. So it feels quite secure, which is interesting. Sometimes it's not great. Like sometimes it doesn't quite sit where you want it to. It sort of like shifts across, but you know, if you flip it the other way or you just find another spot, like it's kind of perfect 90% of the time, which is pretty cool. Also, by the way, if you couldn't tell, I'm the guy, when you play a board game with me, that makes sure everything is like really neat and straight, and then someone bumps the table just to take the piss, and I just get like, and I need to put it back. Anyway, thanks for watching. See you in the next video.